Then ultimately, I think I just led with my heart, made an offer of $1.59 million, meaning that we paid 50 to 90K above valuation, 110K above the last transaction in the building. And hello everyone, it has been a while and welcome to this new video and welcome to my temporary accommodation. So as you can see, the background is a little bit different. I'm in a temporary accommodation for 3 months. It's my friend's place as I transition from moving out from my first home and into my second home. And the main point of the video today is to share a little bit more about the process of getting our second home, the mindset, the strategy, and the reason why we committed into our second place in 3 weeks. All right, so it's a little bit different because when we are buying our first home, then the Florence residences, we were really driven by the fact that we just wanted a space of our own. We don't want to wait till 35 till we buy the HDB, and of course, since living in the Florence, we have a little bit of an experience. We also have our own set of preferences. We know a little bit better, which we have listed down in finding this second home. So for this second home, I'll share a little bit more later in the video, but we committed to it within about 3 weekends of viewing. And so I'm going to share the reasons why and also why we sort of overpaid for it. We kind of paid $100,000 over valuation for it, and I'll tell you why later in this video. Okay, so the content agenda today, what I'm going to share a little bit is really the introduction, the ideal requirements for our second home, our viewing strategy, how it was planned and how it went, and also the negotiation process and why we overpaid. So firstly, the motivation for moving out of the Florence residences is definitely to get a bigger space. Before we bought the first home, one, we were driven by budget. We just wanted a home of our own. But before that, we were all having corporate jobs. I wasn't a self-employed person, but since becoming self-employed, I always thought that, maybe if we have a proper study, it will be a little bit more comfortable. We will have a little bit more space to breathe. So when the opportunity allows, when we got an offer for our first home, which was a decent offer, we thought maybe this was a sign that we should move on, we should sell. So a little bit of a backstory is that we sold our first home at $850,000. We bought it for $734,000. So there was a little bit of a gains there. And the offer of $850,000 was actually similar to our neighbors who sold on level 12 and level 16. And we were on level 7. So we thought, we shouldn't be greedy. And from a professional, I think, perspective as a realtor, I know that for one bedroom, in terms of the price growth, I think in the next 12 months, it would not move significantly. However, in the 2-bed, 2-bath market, I think the prices will still move because we see a lot more demand for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. So I thought since we are seeing decent profit for our 1-bedroom, I think we should sell it and use that profits to move in a 2-bedroom before prices move up significantly. So that's one of the reasons why we sold to move. But of course, really is to just have a bigger space that we can stay in it for a little bit longer, ideally move closer to the city center and into an area that we very, very much prefer in terms of our lifestyle. So ideal requirements for a second home before we set out for the search, of course, would be to buy a 2-bed, 2-bath room. Ideally closer to the MRT compared to where we were. At the Florence, we were about 10 minutes away from Kovan MRT, walking distance. So ideally, we will want to be closer. It'll be good if it's a mid-sized condominium with nice landscaping and facilities, because I just thought that, just the coming home, the feel-good effect about walking into a development with nice landscaping will be great. For me, ideally, also in District 15, as walkable to Katong as possible. That has always been an ideal for me. Partly maybe because I grew up in the Mountbatten area with my parents, so I just thought the familiarity would be great. I also like the fact that the Katong area, there's like nice coffee places, cafes, local food, restaurants that I can walk to. So that has always been an ideal. And then we go to the budget, and this was a little bit tricky because I was hoping to keep it below $1.6 million. But if you know the Katong area, that's a little bit hard in terms of the price point. So then I also thought I really, really calculated the amount, maybe the stretch that we could go for will be about $1.8 million. And lastly, This is not a deal breaker, but because I've been trying to get into running this year, so I thought having a good run route would be great, but not a deal breaker. So these are the list of requirements that we have when we were looking into our second home. So with all the requirements in mind, we went ahead with weekend one of viewing. We were viewing in the Katong area at developments that were a little bit higher than the budget, even the stretch budget. But I just wanted to know that if these developments were good, could we have made this work? So we went to see 4 developments on weekend one: Tembusu Grand, the Shore Residences, Amber 45, and also Heritage East, which is in Upper East Coast. So for Heritage East, it was actually a very small development. The unit was on the ground floor with a private pool. My partner really, really wanted to see it. So I was like, okay, good. Let's just go and take a look. But in my mind, I already knew that that was not going to work, because I also think that with this second home, I wanted to find a place that even though we could stay in it for a little bit longer, but I also want to see some sort of appreciation. So for me, those smaller developments with a private pool just does not really work. But I just needed him to see it so that he could come to that conclusion by himself. If not, when he was always bringing up listings to me, I was like, no, this is not gonna work. This is not gonna work. This is not gonna work. And he didn't really understand. But he was also showing me those units with like duplex, with like lofts. And if you're an agent, you do know that those units are a little bit harder to sort of like let go, which is why, generally I would say buyers sort of steer away from it, because they are paying a little bit more for those extra space that may not be usable on a day-to-day basis. So they rather be paying for something that it has actual usable space and is of good value. So Heritage East was out. And then we went to Tembusu Grand. Tembusu Grand recently TOP, so there's a lot of units on the market. The 2-bed, 2-bath, when we were looking at it, were listed closer to the $1.9 million mark. But I thought with a lot of subsale units in the market, I thought, maybe we could drive a deeper negotiation, and it's a completely brand new unit, so I don't need to do any renovations as well. But looking at it, it was a 667 for a 2-bed, 2-bath. We saw a few units. I thought I would definitely love Tembusu Grand, but what was surprising is that there was not that strong draw once I saw it. And I think firstly could be that the 2-bed, 2-bath were all facing out. So either you'll be facing Emerald of Katong, or you'll be facing the car park at the back. And that future plot of land that's behind at the car park is also earmarked for residential. So potentially I will have to deal with construction noise. I don't know what's the timeline for this. So I thought that could be a little bit of the risk. I left Tembusu Grand a little bit uncertain, because I was just like, oh, there was not a strong pull, which I initially thought there would be. So I was a little bit surprised. Then we went to Amber 45. Amber 45 is a 100 over unit condominium, freehold, and it is beautiful. So in terms of the landscaping, the exclusivity, it has a pool, it has a tennis court, it has a gym that is all super, super well maintained. So in terms of like the landscaping facilities wise, it's 100%, not an issue at all. We went to see the unit, even though it was on the 4th floor looking into the sea view, which is a residential next door. Not really an issue, because you're looking into a landscaping into the next door condominium. So I thought like it could still work. But the deal breaker was when the agent dropped the maintenance fee. It was $700 a month for a 2-bed, 2-bath. And that was where I stepped back. And I thought that, okay, I don't think this is going to work, because I eventually do want to sell this home. And at this stage, I think maintenance is $700 already. It could likely go a little bit higher if I were to stay 4 or 5 years. So I just thinking in terms of future resaleability, is anybody going to buy from me? Because $700 for maintenance fee is really quite hefty. Then we went next door to the Shore Residences. And the Shore Residences, I've always passed by it on buses. It was just right across from Katong Shopping Centre. So location, honestly, is, I thought, the best. But stepping into a development, what I realized is that, oh, it actually has a multi-story car park. All the facilities is on the multi-story car park. So in terms of the grounds wise, there's really not a lot of areas to walk. I didn't really have that home feeling. But plus the fact that the unit that we saw was a 2-bed 2-bath, there was sort of like a dry kitchen area. So there's no proper space to put your dining table. The dining table will have to be in the balcony. And then secondly, original condition, what the developer has done previously in the master bedroom was quite interesting. There's sort of like your glass cabinets, and then you have a sunken bath in the master bedroom. So even though I have to be paying a little bit higher above what my budget would have allowed, but apart from that, is that I didn't really have the feel good feeling in the development. And then I felt like there's going to be quite a bit of renovation that needs to be done if I want to take away certain things that's provided by the developer. So rounding up, I think weekend one of viewing, I was a bit like, okay, Tembusu Grand would be ideal in terms of like the layout, in terms of like lesser renovation fees, but then I didn't have that home feeling. And the unit, to be honest, was a little bit small. Then looking into Amber 45, which is ideal, but maintenance fee is like super, super high. And then the Shaw Residences, which I thought location was good, but again, I didn't really like the landscaping, and the unit definitely I will have to do a little bit of renovation to take away some of the things that the developer has provided. So I thought, okay, we're going to leave all this development. I think KIV is a bit uncertain, 50-50, but because of the budget as well, could be an issue. Because I thought going into this is that if I really love the development, then I would stretch my budget. If not, ideally, I would not want to stretch my budget. So that was weekend one of viewing. Then we go into weekend number 2. And so weekend number 2, I thought to myself that maybe I need to explore outside of the Katong area to see if there are any locations that I'll be open to staying. So I did go to see another 3 developments. One is Thomson Impressions, secondly Principal Gardens, and third, The Landmark, which is also another newly TOP condominium in the city centre. And the reason why I went to Thomson is because I always thought the Thomson area is quite nice. You're quite close to the nature park. Again, the run route requirement, that would be ideal. And then also you have like the cafes and everything that's upcoming. And then there is a new development coming up in Thomson end of this year, Thomson Reserve. And I know that they'll be priced quite high. So I do see that that area has a little bit of growth in terms of price point, in terms of a new benchmark that we set in the area. Principal Garden has always been a condominium to me in terms of like resale condominiums, like a top tier, like a tier A condominium, because the landscaping is beautiful, super manicured, really, really, really nice. You have views of like the GCB area for the 2-bed 2-bath also. So that was ideal. The Landmark was just something that my partner wanted to see because it's newly TOP'd, and then we just thought, okay, I mean, location-wise, quite near the city central. Maybe we should just go explore. So we set out to it. First, we saw Thomson Impression, corner unit. The development was really, really nice. I think 200 over units, super quiet, peaceful, well-maintained in terms of like a resale development. Could see ourselves buying that unit because the 2-bedroom that we saw was a corner unit. It has windows in like the kitchen. Can't really remember if there's windows in the toilet, but we thought, okay, good space. It was like a conventional 2-bed 2-bath layout, which we quite like. And it's quite near the MRT. It was quite near Bright Hill MRT. From the balcony on the side, you're looking over towards the landed enclave. So generally quite nice. The only thing is that we are not super familiar with the Thomson area, even though on paper, I think Thomson and everything seems good, but we are just not very familiar with the area. But we like the development, we like the unit that we saw. Then we went to Principal Garden. So Principal Garden, I just wanted to show my partner that, okay, this is like the standard of what a resale development could be. So same thing, he was wowed. In terms of landscaping facilities, really, really nice. And we also had a friend who was staying there, like bring us around. The unit that we saw was overlooking the Dempsey landed enclave. So very, very beautiful. You do know that your views are kind of protected. But of course, he brought up a good point because beside Principal Garden now, there's actually BTOs that are building. So they're currently in construction, and in the future, they'll be built up, and they will actually be overlooking like the pool area, the facilities area. So when you enter Principal Gardens in the future, you will see super tall buildings at the back that will be blocking the views on the other side, and that might affect like the resaleability in the future. So that was a good point, I thought. So even though like Principal Gardens, I think wins in terms of landscaping, facilities, views. The layout for the 2 bed 2 bath is not the most ideal as well. They have a few layouts that are a little bit weird. So I would say that is where, we realize, okay, what's the priority? I think it's location and then also layout. Layout was something that is quite important for us as well. So left Principal Garden, went to the Landmark, which is a new development. When we went to the Landmark, I was kind of shocked because I personally, and this is from my personal opinion, I feel like the Landmark, the quality, the build was quite bad, was really quite bad. To me, doesn't make sense to pay this kind of money to this area that's standalone, even though it is quite close to the city center. I just felt like the quality just doesn't match up. I feel like in a lot of like outside central region, city fringe region, I've seen better quality, better builds. And potentially it could be because it just got its key, so there's still a lot of rectification works that's happening. But when you go to like the facilities deck, the swimming pool deck and all of that, wasn't impressed by the quality at all. So I was like, no way I am going to pay to buy into the Landmark. So I think conclusion for weekend 2 is that we definitely saw things that we like outside of Katong. Thomson impression was good. Principal Gardens was good, but then we had a bit of concerns on the layout and the resaleability. Landmark was like a no-go. So after weekend 2, we had a little bit of a regroup. This is where we are at, right? Thomson impressions, the price was about 1.7 plus. The Landmark was 1.7, 1.6 plus. We could get a unit, but then that was like no because of the quality. Principal Gardens was around the $1.8 million mark. And then this is where we sort of like sat down again to relook at some of the listings, because looking at all these prices, then if we are already willing to pay for these prices, then do we want to go back to Katong, which is an area that we actually prefer and is on the top of our list because we are going to be paying these prices anyway. And then secondly, we also thought that, okay, if we want to keep it closer within to our budget, then if we look closer to the northeast area where we are at, like Woodley, Potong Pasir, prices are also like in the 1.6 to $1.7 million mark. So would we be willing to pay those prices to stay somewhere in the city fringe, but closer to where we were at currently? So we had a thought of that. And then what we realized is that actually our top two sort of like ideals is the location and the layout. Then, which is why we went to the weekend 3 of viewing. So going into weekend 3 of viewing, and this is where we saw the house that we eventually bought. Actually, we already saw this listing a couple of weekends ago, but then we just only managed to arrange for a viewing this weekend. We saw 2 units in the same development. One was on the top floor and one was a very, very well renovated unit on level 9. So this development is located along Daman Road, so it's a slightly smaller development, freehold, but the layout is very good. It doesn't have any bay windows, unlike some of the older condominiums in the Katong Amber area. So when we saw this unit, we were like, this could work. In terms of layout, it's a little bit bigger. It's 700 plus square feet. And then also in terms of the price point wise, it is actually lower and could be below our budget, which is rare for a condominium in the Katong vicinity. So after this viewing, we actually again went back to Tembusu Grand to take a look at the 2 bed 2 bath again. So same thing, same feeling. We were a bit uncertain because initially we were thinking maybe we could go with a unit that's facing Emerald of Katong, but after this time we were like, actually if we were to get a unit at Tembusu Grand, maybe getting the one facing the car park would be better. Then we went to see the unit that's facing the car park, but we're still a little bit uncertain because of the construction that we potentially have to deal with. So leaving weekend 3, we were like, okay, we saw a development along Daman Road. Unit is good, layout is good, location we could deal with. But the only thing is that it's not a development that really has a lot of landscaping. Facilities like the gym is super, super small, like you likely won't use it. The pool is a good length, so you could potentially still go down to have a swim, but it's not like a wow like development that is like modern with a lot of landscaping. So that was the only downside to it. So leaving weekend 3, I think I had this development in the back of my mind. I was like, this could actually really work if the price is right. So we went to see the well-renovated unit again for a second time. and we thought, okay, this could really work. So in terms of their listing price, they were listed at 1.65 million for a 2-bed 2-bath, and it's over 750 square feet. What I like is that there's no bay windows, unlike some of the condominiums in that area. It is a quiet facing, and the bonus is that the toilet and kitchen comes with a window, which is also rare as well with a new 2-bed 2-bath room. Renovations were actually quite good because they took down like the walls to the enclosed kitchen, but still put doors to make it enclosed, and then that helped to enhance like the living room area. So I thought, okay, renovation wise, we might not need to do as much. So what we did, we went ahead to put in our first offer at $1.5 million. And this is based off the fact that the unit above us, our neighbors, would have bought in at 1.48 million in September. But of course, because this unit is very well renovated, I know that the owners will also be asking for a premium. So which is why we landed at 1.5 just to test the owners a little bit. But of course, immediately rejected because they know that they can fetch a lot more for their unit. And I think comparing with a general area in the vicinity, they do know that this is still quite well priced. I think this is where being an agent almost cost me this deal, because I was so fixated on the numbers that I was really trying to ignore like the emotional side of things. Even though this is for my own stay, I can stay in it for a little bit longer. I just felt like it doesn't make sense for me to pay much more than the last transacted price. And I think this is something that I think all the agents will agree with me, and even as buyers as well, because we always take the last transaction as the gauge. And even when I went ahead to ask the bank for valuation came in between $1.5 million, and the stretch valuation that they are willing to give me is $1.55 million. So I thought that maybe I should sit a while, maybe if people are not super interested in this unit, then the agent will get back to me, then I could have a stronger negotiating power. This turned out to be really a bad move because I was actually the first person to see this listing, because I was already looking at development and then this listing came out. So I was the first person to see this listing, but then I proceeded to let this listing sit to invite more competition to come to offer for this unit. So I think I let the unit set for maybe about 1.5 to 2 weeks, and I actually had a friend who is an agent, a colleague as well, to help me with the negotiation process. So we were a little bit like, let them come back to us, because we want to strong hand them in this negotiation, because we want to get a good deal as well. And we don't think that there will be people out there that would pay very much higher above valuation, above the last transaction. But boy, were we wrong. So in this period of this 1.5 to 2 weeks of letting this unit sit on the market, I think at the back of my mind, I kept thinking about the unit, because I just feel like, okay, in terms of the price point, layout, location, it's sort of like the best of everything. It's quite balanced that way. But then I just felt like, okay, let me wait till the person come back to me, which really, I think was a bad move on my part. I just felt like I was too numbers driven and didn't really take into account my emotion, which is something that I've learned. And I think my mindset has shifted a little bit, especially with my clients who are buying also, because today, if your timeline is actually much longer, you're holding it for 5, 8, 10 years, actually, you shouldn't really be too concerned about the price point. Generally, in the Singapore market, if you look at it historically, price have been trending up. So if you don't bet against history, you have a strong holding and a long holding period. I think even if paying a little bit more in the market right now, it's okay. So always also listen to your gut, especially if this property is for your own stay. I think that's the biggest lesson that I learned. So sorry for digressing a little bit, but throughout this period, as I was just letting this unit sit on the market, letting it invite more people to come and look at it, I was also looking through Property Guru. Then I realized that really at this price point, I'll be paying this price point for other areas as well. So if I'm really prioritizing location, then this is something that I should seriously consider. Then finally, I told my colleague who's helping me negotiate, who is helping me put in the offer, to go and ask the agent, like, hey, is there any offers on the market? And then this is when she came back to us to say that, I thought your buyers were not serious because the offer was quite low. And we actually have an offer now on the table that's $1.58 million, and we are going to close it. But the sellers are overseas. So, it's been taking some time, the back and forth and all that. They haven't transferred the money yet, but if your buyers are keen, then you need to make a higher offer. When my colleague friend relayed this message to me is where I went into the calculation mode. I was like, oh my God, I've been thinking about this house and now it's to a point where they're going to sell it. Like, do I make a higher offer? Then this is where I started like calling my partner, and then we were discussing about it, and then he was like, he thinks that we should make an offer because there's really nothing much in the market that we are seeing that we like and in a price point that's comfortable. And then I also went to ask my two bosses here who gave me two completely different advice. Okay, so the first person on the left hand side, he was like, no, the price doesn't make sense, it's not your forever home, find something else. And then he said that, the resale market is quite quiet at this time, so paying over valuation in the current market is quite interesting, which I understand that perspective is very, very numbers driven. And it's coming from the perspective where if you want to exit, you want to protect your entry as well. And then on the right hand side is my other boss, and then he said that he also paid the highest for his house. The thing is that, is there other motivating factors for me trying to buy this house? And in the long term, do I think that I can break even? So if let's say today I'm buying and I'm staying for 4, 5, 8 years, is that price point going to be okay? So he also did tell me that if you're a buyer, be emotional. I respect like both perspective, one coming from a more like own say perspective and a different one coming from a more investment perspective. But I think ultimately what made me really decide to overpay for this house is that because if I'm comparing like the developments in the area, if we look at the new ones that's coming along Dunman Road, right behind it, that's the Continuum. Down the road, Grand Dunman is coming up. Then, of course, you have your Tembusu Grand, Emerald of Katong, Head Court. And then closer to the Amber side, like One Amber, Amber Park, the Esta, Shore Residences, and Amber 45. In terms of their 2-bed, 2-bath pricing, this is how it looks like. Even at Grand Dunman and Continuum, which will be closer to where I'm going to be at. Grand Dunman, in terms of their developer sale pricing, the 2-bed, 2-bath is already from $1.77 million to $2.251 million. The Continuum from $1.60 to $2.021 million. In terms of PSF as well, is anywhere from the mid 2000s all the way to 3000 PSF. Emerald of Katong, which is a harmonized development, from 1.589 all the way to 1.88. Tembusu Grand, their sub-sale 2-bed, 2-bath, I think is the biggest indicator of how the resale market is accepting prices here, is at 1.81. And then Head Court, which is right beside Tembusu Grand, bigger 2-bed, 2-bath, but price point is $2.08 million to $2.15 million. Then we go down further to the Amber area. There are things that are above the $2 million price point. In the One Amber Esta, because they are a bigger development, and then their landscaping in terms of their facilities much better, unit sizes bigger as well. The Shore Residences, a 103-year leasehold, price point is from about 1.8 to 2. Amber 45, a smaller development, but price point is also about 1.8, 1.9 because it's very exclusive. Amber Park is the newest, I would say the newest big development that's in that area, and even their resale price points from 1.9 to $2 million. So at that time, the unit that I was looking at, their listed price is at 1.65, and their offer on the table is 1.58. So looking at all this, because I know that if this is the prices that people have entered in the market in the past 12 months or what the developer has sold, I do know that at 1.58, if I were to make a little bit of a higher offer, my entry price is still quite safe. So the decision here is that, do you overpay from the last person? Because from 1.48 to 1.58, it's already $100,000 gap. Valuation is 1.5 to 1.55. So you're essentially paying 50 to 80K above valuation. Does that make sense? So this is when I really step back and ask myself, if I'm balancing the own stay factor, how long I can potentially stay in this area, a 2-bed, 2-bath, likely a comfortable space for me right now, is that okay for me? Then ultimately, I think I just led with my heart. I feel like looking at the different condominiums, I wanted to prioritize my lifestyle. I don't want to just think about the money side of things. I want to enjoy the space that we will be buying into, the area that we will be buying into. So with that, we made an offer of $1.59 million, which eventually was accepted, meaning that we paid about 50 to 90K above valuation, 110K above the last transaction in the building. And since then, I've seen other units that's been listed in the development. They are of a higher asking price, but the units are nowhere near as renovated. They likely will need more renovation works. And looking at also the sub-sale transactions, the asking price of what people are asking for in Grand Diamond, Continuum, Tembusu Grand, I actually feel very, very happy with my decision. And I really can't wait to get the keys to my second home. Yeah. So I think the biggest lesson here is that, from an agent, if you're working with an agent, I think the agent really can give you a perspective of the numbers, whether it makes sense or not. But ultimately, a home is not really just about the numbers. It's really about the feeling. It's about the memories you will create. Initially, I was also toying the idea of buying a 3-bedroom in the outskirts and then maybe getting a bigger appreciation, then buy into an area like Katong 4 years later. But then I'll be closer to my 40s. So in my mid-30s right now, what do I want to prioritize? I feel like the lifestyle aspect was really, really important for me. I do not want to press pause. I do not want to compromise on my lifestyle just so that I can make maybe an extra $100,000 to $150,000. So ultimately, I feel like if you're working with an agent, the agent really can give you the perspective of the numbers and all that. But if you're buying a home, I think it's also good to listen to yourself, despite what all the noise is out there. And I think that, sometimes the money is really not that big of a factor. It's really where you're at, the memories that you make and your experience. And those could be valued more than money. So I think this is really like a different perspective that I've taken with the purchase of my second house. So if you are in the market now and you're confused and you're very fixated on the numbers, feel free to reach out to me and I will really give you a very balanced perspective, especially if there's an area that you really, really want to be in. And if you're a District 15 seller and buyers out there, I really love the area, and through this process, I've also familiarized myself with many condominiums in the area, so I can do a good job at selling and helping you buy your next home in the area. So yeah, if that is you, feel free to reach out to me. Again, my name is Ming. I really want to take a very balanced approach when it comes to real estate. So if you're looking for an agent and you're not working with anyone, feel free to reach out to me via my WhatsApp number and I'm happy to have a chat with you. And comment in the section below, should I do a home tour of this temporary home or maybe my new home? If that's what you'd like to see, let me know in the comments below and I hope to speak to some of you very soon. Bye.